wonderful ideas and suggestions for guests and topics.
Great events, programs, and all the countries and listen to
Welcome to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. I'm your host, Lawrence Payne. To our regular viewing audience, welcome. To those joining us perhaps for the first time here for HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, we can be found now every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. and again at 6 p.m., Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m. As always, at the top here, let me thank you for your thoughtful calls and emails concerning guests and subjects that we've covered on previous shows of Dialogue Houston, but particularly your great ideas for topics and guests and subjects to be covered on upcoming segments Dialogue Houston. For after all, this is your community affairs, public affairs show here on HCC TV, now proudly in its 29th season. I have a very special guest lined up for you this afternoon. This is what we call a special edition of Dialogue Houston. It is the work we do through the Houston Public Library and with the Houston Public Library. The title of this particular segment, since it is dealing with the library, is Living in New Knowledge. Living in New Knowledge. And where does that name come from? The name comes from the link card, your library card, L-I-N-K, Living in New Knowledge. If you do not have a library card, then you need to do so by going to the City of Houston's website, to the Houston Public Library website, and getting one. You can get one online. It gives you access to all the wonderful libraries, not only here in the region, but across a large spectrum of this country. So here we are to talk about a very important subject in our city this evening, and that is literacy. And there's no one better to have this conversation about the state of literacy in Houston, Texas, than our good friend Julie Baker Finck, who is the president of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation. And she has great experience in this area for many, many years. I've known her for many years, particularly when she was with the Houston Independent School District as their chief academic officer and chief major projects officer. Julie is one of those young people who have dedicated herself to the idea of education and literacy. Literacy, as we know, is the gateway to everything else. The heartbeat of Houston is literacy. And I could go on because I go back with literacy to the Reed Commission when it was first founded in 1988. So it's part of my DNA, also literacy. I'm going to stop there and welcome Julie and let her pick up the mantle from there and just say how great and wonderful it is to have you on this segment of Dialogue Houston. Welcome, Julie.
Larry, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And yes, we go back for probably 15 years now, 12, 15 years. It's been a while. I just want to give a shout out to you. You've just been just an incredible advocate for children and families and literacy and education for many, many years. And so thank you for all that you continue to do and for inviting me on this segment to talk about an important topic and one in which I'm extremely passionate about.
Thank you for being with us. Julie, let's start with the basics. Where are we with literacy here in Houston? The statistic that always has been in my mind that still sticks with me is that 1 in 5 Houston adults are functionally illiterate. And I think it kind of goes from there in the way we understand literacy. Is that still kind of a working number?
Well, actually, Larry, I have terrible news for you. The data is worse than that now.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, based on the PIAC test results from 2020, we now have 1 in 3 Houston adults who are considered low literate, functionally illiterate. They have low functioning skills. That means that they have really difficulty learning to or reading, writing, communicating, problem solving, in the context of their job, in the family, and in society. And so we really have a generational crisis here. As you know, basically a couple of weeks ago, the Texas Education Commission also released preliminary state of Texas academic assessment for readiness in reading and math and the high school level exams. And it also has grim results. In fact, 43% of Texas students who took the STAR exam met or exceeded standard in reading, which is 4% fewer than last year. And so what we're seeing here, Larry, is we had a problem prior to the pandemic. And certainly, we've had several big catastrophes, if you will, from Hurricane Harvey to the winter storm to now COVID, that's all having its bearing on not just children, but adults and families and our entire community. So we have a lot more work to do. Some of the ground that we were seeing and the momentum that was building pre-pandemic, we've kind of taken that Texas two-step back, if you will, unfortunately. But I'm optimistic. I think that there's a lot that we can do as a community to come together to get more kids back on track and to help parents and help be their child's best and most important teacher, but as well as get those adults back up to speed, giving them a second chance at learning how to read and being equipped with the type of skills they need to be successful in work, in life, and in helping to raise their children.
For young adults and adults, I think it's important that we touch on, as you just did in many ways, the importance of understanding that literacy is the key to so many things. And that even that word illiterate, which we don't really use anymore, the low function literacy, because everyone started off at some point reading or trying to read. And for all kinds of reasons in school and poverty and family situations, just never did or got off that track. And I know that so many young people in school who have tried to do their education and stay on grade level with their reading as they've fallen back some grade levels, it's just so hard to catch up. And then with the pandemic and everything else, it just has made it almost impossible. And some parents trying to teach kids at school from home, learning at home, who just not, their capacity to do so because of working two jobs many times, they just don't have the time.
That's right. And I think that you've pointed out some of the key issues. And let me back up your summation right there with some data. Approximately a quarter of Texas fourth graders and a third of Texas seventh graders met or exceeded standard on the STAR. So we have just not just in reading, but also in writing. And we know fundamentally that reading is a precursor for being a good writer. And when in reading for those third graders, fewer than 40% met standard. And we know that third grade is a critical milestone in a child's success from when they're expected to transition from learning how to read to reading to learn. So we have tens of thousands of kids just here, in sort of the greater Houston area who need help getting caught back up. In fact, HISD recently shared some information that they're anticipating based on, again, the second final results of the STAR administration this summer, that 41,000 kids may need additional interventions to get back on track, back on grade level. So that's a significant number of children, and that's just in HISD. So we're really going to be faced with some hardships. A lot of pressure is going to be placed on our educators, our administrators, but they're also going to be seeking support from the community, both through volunteerism, through more parent engagement, and just activating the community to do all they can to extend that learning at home, in the community, on weekends, whatever we can do to help those kids have more time to learn.
And this is an area where really volunteers can play a major role. And many of the schools and organizations that you mentioned in the partnership with the wonderful work that you're doing through the Barbara Bush Youth and Literacy Foundation and the partners that y'all have put together, everyone has a role and a purpose that they can give to this effort. I think it's important to know that here's a thing that you can really get involved in and have passion for and volunteer and have purpose and really do something to change another human being's life. Because that's really what it's all about. And since education and literacy are so tied together, one cannot get the form of education one needs if one cannot read. It is almost that simple. So I think here is a community cry, shout out, if you will, to mobilize as many Houstonians as we can to do that. But to do that with education and knowledge leads me to my next step, and that is the wonderful Houston Blueprint for adults literacy that everyone should get their hands on. It's only 47 pages. It's easy read, but it gives you all the data and statistics information that you need to be really educated around what these issues are.
And it has big font, so I wanted to let you point that out. It's big font, right. Good, some good pictures and some good call outs. So Yeah, so it's not a heavy read. It's
Right.
definitely very informative. I continue to read it over and over, and I always tend to pick up on something that maybe I didn't quite stick with me. But thank you for spotlighting the Blueprint for Adult Literacy, because this is something that actually Dr. Lawson, the executive director of the Houston Public Library, and I spoke about a couple of years ago when she shared with me the great and fantastic news that Mayor Turner was going to be creating the Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy within the Houston Public Library. And I went downtown to meet with her and with Nicole Robinson, the deputy director, and we started ideating around what we could really do to help set the organization up for success and to really shine the light on the crisis that we have around low functioning literacy in among our adult population, and really to bring the community together to act on solutions. So we know we had a problem, but we really want to be very solutions oriented. And we had discussed the prospect of creating such a blueprint and to work together. And of course, then the pandemic hit, so it kind of set us back just a little bit in our execution. And of course, Federico Salas-Asnardi was hired as director, and Jackie Aguilera and the team there were put in place. And so we really felt like last fall that it was time for us to begin to lay the groundwork for developing the blueprint. And we were fortunate to enlist the expertise of Deloitte Consulting, who worked alongside of us basically from January to June when we did the unveiling of the blueprint. And we brought together over 100 cross-sector stakeholders, cross-sector leaders across our community to help inform and to shape, again, not just the data, the research, but the plans that we could really enact to change lives. And so I'm really excited. I really encourage those who are watching or listening this evening to the program to visit adultliteracyhouston.org. There's great information. And, I always like sharing statistics, but we always have to remember that when we talk about numbers, we're really talking about people. And, the people is really the important focus of our work.
Yeah, knowledgeable, educated civic engagement of our citizens is so important, to have the facts and data they need to be that type of advocate and to be engaged in the issues with actual data. I think it's important also to mention that this is one of the things going forward that for Houstonians and for the greater Houston region, it's going to really be the key to us being able to compete and attract corporations and jobs, having a ready, able, educated workforce to be able to step in when needed and called upon. All these pieces connect. I think it's important that the connectivity and how the interrelatedness and interdependency of all these issues for us to see in the greater region, Houston region, how from an economic, educational, personal growth perspective, all of it's tied together. And I think reading becomes that thing, and literacy becomes that glue that holds all of this together.
Actually, literacy has become a global metric for measuring the health of communities. And I don't mean health from the standpoint of physical health, but the vibrancy around economics. It also is a key indicator of crime, poverty, again, health, personal health, unemployment, GDP. It really is, the bedrock for a thriving community, or one that really is being set back. And we really know that one of the things that we must do is to help more of our adults. When we teach adults how to read, they help their children how to read. And that's one way we really need to focus on the fact that this is a multi-generational issue. It's multifaceted, but it's also multi-generational. And as part of the blueprint, the Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy and the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation enlisted support from Gallup, and they're a big think tank and analytic powerhouse here globally. And they actually took the data around adult literacy and did some economic projections based on, again, our adult literacy rates and our economic engines here, and found that if we could take the adults who were functioning at the lowest literacy level and move them up just one level, our GDP would be impacted $13 billion annually. And even more importantly, or just as important, the individuals who would then move up from a level 1 to or below to a level 2 would garner an average of $13,000 annually in their income. That is a huge differentiator. That can be the difference of someone being having a sustainable living wage and supporting their family. And you mentioned earlier about them, parents and others working 1, 2, 3 jobs. It may help them to reduce the number of jobs and to advance in their career when they have those basic skills that are a prerequisite for just about every position, especially those that are going to be high demand and high growth for our city.
Well, you're really talking about humanity and the dignity of the human being. In the work that I've done with students and others at all age levels, grade levels, and adults, even when I ran Search for the Homeless, the frustration of not being able to read, the shame in some ways, the never wanting to let people know that one cannot read, the stress that goes with hiding that I can't read and doing things to block that you will find out. But at the same time, wanting to know how to read became such a piece that we had to begin to think about how to address it. That's why I love the terms low functional literacy other than other labels. The same thing I did with Search with the Homeless. They're not homeless people. They're unhoused human beings. They're unhoused human beings. I think how we as a society think of those who are trying to help in literacy and other social issues and concerns, because as you said so clearly, it's all about that link to poverty and getting out of poverty and having an understanding that you have a roadmap and a future and a pathway to be able to change all of that, change that projection, change your life, change the narrative, change the outcome. And so it's so important to give people that hope. Is it not, Julie?
It is. I appreciate you so much, Larry. That's one thing that I've always just enjoyed and valued and really respected about you, truly, is that you're humanizing the issue. And again, there are lots of statistics, there's a lot of data, and we need to look at that data. But more importantly, we need to look at the human beings that are being reflected in those numbers. And, you're so right. You're right on the money when you talk about just the shame, the lack of dignity, the embarrassment that, and the stigma that comes with being low literate. And as an adult, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to step up and to step out there and put yourself out there to ask for help. Many of the adults, we just have to understand that they lead very difficult and challenging lives. They truly do. And many times they create their own, how do I want to say this? Pathway, their own way to make it. Mm-hmm. And whether it's a trusted friend or a child, one of their children who knows how to read and knows right. English and can help navigate, they always have like someone who they can trust on with information. I can't imagine the enormity of the challenge of having to be low literate and go through a Hurricane Harvey or a winter storm or a pandemic. And all of the information that they're expected to consume on how to better themselves, how to keep safe, where to go for help, how to get that help, what the implications are, just so much. And a lot of times, they just don't have the competencies, but a lot of times it's that confidence too, in seeing that hope, seeing that and knowing that there's help available to them.
So where can Houstonians, where can citizens go to get a sense of how to be that navigator, how to be an advocate for people who are in need of literacy functions and literacy availability? Let's kind of bridge into that now, and also tell us some of the great things you have coming up, not only through the Barbara Bush Foundation and in conjunction with the Houston Public Library and other things that are coming down the pike here.
Again, want to do the plug for the adult literacy blueprint by encouraging people to go to adultliteracyhouston.org, learning about the issues, visiting the Barbara Bush Houston literacy website. We have a lot of information to share. So first and foremost, become an informed citizen about this cause and this issue. And we have volunteer opportunities. We have a coalition of organizations who need volunteers. They rely on volunteers to mentor and help students learn how to read. We have adult literacy providers who need them to have mentors for adults who are going through the program. So there's lots of ways to get involved. And if you don't have time, donate books. If you have money, donate money. There are ways for you to get involved. If you don't have any of those things, be a connector, share our message, and to help someone else who maybe does have one of those three things to get involved. And so part of this is creating a groundswell, rising tide lifts all boats. And so that's what we really want to do, both in the Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy, the Houston Public Library, and the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, is to truly realize, what Mrs. Bush had, which was a vision of literacy for all. And why not? We are in the most innovative city and the can-do city in this nation, and we should be the role model for other cities on how to break the generational cycle of low literacy. And so we are going to continue at the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation to serve as a champion for this cause and to carry forth Mrs. Bush's indelible legacy interest in literacy. And there are several ways, again, that we have some great opportunities and some events coming up. One I want to promote is actually in partnership with the Houston Public Library and Mayor Turner, is that we are going to be doing a ribbon cutting for the Barbara Bush Literacy Plaza in early September. We're so excited about that. I was there when Dr. Lawson asked Mrs. Bush on behalf of Mayor Turner if she would, agree to have the Literacy Plaza named after her. And I tell you, her first response was, I'm sure there was someone more deserved, but she was truly thrilled and honored that the city would recognize her and put this in the spotlight. So we're so excited. This will be a go-to place for the community to gather, to share, a focal point downtown between the Julia Idison building and the main public library branch just across from City Hall. So we're just so excited. They'll have a stage and an outdoor children's library and an adult library, a gathering place, a huge jumbo screen. And so we're just so grateful to all of the contributors to making that happen for our city. We also have a couple of other fundraisers coming up this fall. One is on October 15th. It is the Power of Literacy Luncheon. It'll be the 6th annual event. It's going to be held at the Post Oak Hotel downtown in the ballroom. It's hosted by our Ladies for Literacy Guild. So again, if you're a woman out there watching and you want to become part of our organization, we have an incredible group of more than 400 members already to join our Ladies for Literacy Guild. And then we also have a young professionals group. And so they're having their gala on Friday night, November 12th at the Hotel Zaza downtown. It's going to be a fun Alice in Wonderland theme, and a great way, again, to have fun and party for a purpose. So we're hoping that people will get involved. And of course, visit, our website. We have quite a number of programs, Larry. And I want to just share just a couple because we're hitting some milestones coming up in September. We have an event on September 8th in partnership with the Children's Museum of Houston and Phillips 66, during which we will give out our 100,000th home library to a child. And since we started our My Home Library program, which empowers children to become book owners and to be readers at their own home, we will have given out over 500,000, 600,000 books just through that program alone. And we know when kids have books at home, they're empowered and they become great readers. That's why the library systems are so important too. And you mentioned that My Link card. Again, want to make sure that people go out and get their library card. There's so many incredible resources, not just books, through the public library system that people can do to get involved. So thank you for letting me give that plug.
Well, thank you for getting it all in. I appreciate it very much. I just want to go back to that one little point you made about books, because I was going to end with books, of course, because, I work with the public library, Houston Public Library with Dr. Lawson. Books, donating books or buying books, that statistic that always struck me. A home of a young person in the formative years of their lives who did not have books in the home, who did not have reading or someone to read to them or to sit with a book, their own book, take it off the shelf, sit down and read it. That statistic always struck me. Because growing up, I knew many households and many homes that did not have books. And so the ability to have actually a book, a hard copy book in your home, on your shelves, that's yours as a kid, as a child, is a very important piece. Online learning is wonderful. Printing off something online is wonderful, but there's nothing like having your own book.
And to smell it when it's new.
Yes.
And just, that you smell that fresh ink, that fresh publishing. But there are 61% of low-income children don't have books in their home. That's a national statistic. So we know we're doing better here in Houston. We still have much more work to do. And again, as children read those and become more proficient readers, they need new books. They need better, to continue to read. And so we're really trying to empower kids to not just be good readers, to be lifelong, joyful readers.
I mean, the challenges in reading today is the same it was when we were all growing up, particularly in my era. The summer reading program was the best thing, one of the best things we had. The challenge of how many books could you read over the course of summer when school was out, and the little prize and gift that you would get at the end, that was really insignificant. It was a challenge to beat your fellow classmates, class persons, in reading more books than they read. And that's one of the things I think that helped children that I grew up with in that era of poverty during the 60s and early 70s. And that people understood in a community that perhaps were, the word used then, deprived of other things, that the ability to get up and out of those situations is to being able to read and getting an education. And those two things today, I think, are equally important when we see disparities and inequities in schools and in systems of education, when we see perhaps some schools that have books that others don't have, the pass me down books, all that stuff. It is so important to have an organization like the Barbara Bush Literacy Foundation, like the Mayor's Office on Literacy, like the Houston Public Library and the Harris County Library, to be able to say, look, we can all as a community make this happen. And in our greater Houston region, which includes the Region 4 service center of all the schools and districts we have in the greater Houston area, I think literacy has to be our #1 challenge as a community, because everything flows from the ability to be able to read.
You're right on point, Larry. That was a great message to point out. And I mean, indisputably, reading can be the bridge. It can be the determining factor of whether or not someone is successful or not, whether our society, our community, our neighborhoods are successful or not. So I'm with you, and I'm glad that you are spreading the word through your program. And thank you for being an advocate for helping to utilize this platform to reach more people across our community. So thank you so much, Larry.
Thank you so much, Julie, for being on. I really enjoyed it. Time was too short. We could have gone on for much longer, you and I. Look forward to all the events coming up. Please go to the Barbara Bush Literacy Foundation website. Please go to and look up the Houston blueprint for adult literacy. Please go to the Mayor's Office of Adult Literacy. Get your library card, your link card if you don't have one. All those things tied together. And the events that Julie mentioned coming up, particularly the dedication of the plaza in front of the library between the two buildings, Julie Allison and the main library. That is going to be such a rich, wonderful place for bringing human beings together. The human beings that perhaps would not have a common place to gather, but they come with the same special interest about literacy and education, about helping and serving to young people and adults. It will be a place of experiencing each other from their customs and traditions, their rich understanding of history and culture. It's going to be a place that brings all Houstonians together, a place where one can communicate with someone different than oneself, that we can talk about how we treat each other with respect, how we get engaged as volunteers to help serve the other. It is really always about the other, how we respect others' opinions about how we need to do that in our society today, how we understand how we love our country. We all do, we just perhaps do it in different ways. How we can have a true dialogue about the issues facing as a community, and how we can do it with that human being that's standing right in front of us. And we get to begin a relationship building with that new person who I've just met, because we're standing in front of the Barbara Bush Plaza. We're watching this wonderful performance. We're all happy and we understand each other, but take the opportunity to seek that common ground with that new friend that you'll make by being involved with the activities at the Barbara Bush Plaza. We want to thank you all for being with us for this segment of Dialogue Houston. We look forward to you joining us in upcoming weeks. And as always, stay well, be safe, peace, power, and love.